Georgia, Florida, Georgia, the game of the year in the SEC Eastern Division has been the last few years, should be for 2020, and who knows how far into the future. Talking Georgia, talking Florida, Gators, Bulldogs, who will rule the SEC Eastern Division? What are the trends? Comparing the coaches, the rosters, again, not just this fall, but looking ahead into our crystal ball. And the two best contributors I can think of to get this done. Got David Waters on the line from Gators Breakdown, and also Palmer Toms from Dogs 247 Sports. And gentlemen, David, I don't want you on my case here. I think we're on good ground here. So I want to get started in the right. These are the show colors down below. So I would love to be able to give David his Gator blue or orange, and then do the same for Palmer with the black or the red, and then we could go from there. But I got to pick one color, so we're going with the show. How you gentlemen doing tonight?
Good, Mark. To extend on that initial thought there, I grew up in Georgia. I was raised in Georgia, so I'm kind of used to it.
Very good. And I guess if we do have to choose, they are the three-time SEC Eastern Division champions, so we're going to give them the floor first. So Palmer, if I had to flip a coin, I don't have one on me, but we'll give you the floor first and foremost as the reigning champion. But the margins, at least for the game, have gone from like 35, then 19, and now we're down to a touchdown last year. Just, man, what's happened under Kirby Smart in regards to getting Georgia in this position? The easy answer is recruiting out of his mind compared to what Mark Richt did when this was like a top 10 to 15 program, now making it more like a top 3 to 5 program.
Yeah, you caught me at a great time, Mark. I was just finished up our off-season storylines preview of Florida, so got my knowledge of the Gators right now. And you mentioned it, the margin of victory for Georgia over these last 3 seasons has decreased. Georgia won by 35 in 2017, and like you mentioned, it was a touchdown game this last year. I think one of the biggest differences has just been Georgia's ability to run the ball. You look at the last several years, this game has been decided by the team that rushes for more yards has won the game, and that's been Georgia's strong suit over the last couple of seasons. Between you look back to that 2017 season, the first win in this current win streak for Georgia. You had Nick Chubb, you had Sonny Michel in the backfield, and then these last 2 years you had DeAndre Swift, second round pick for the Detroit Lions in this last week's draft. So Georgia's had the offensive line to do it and had the running backs capable of opening up some space and making good use of it.
Hey, David, that's the first thing that comes to mind for me as well, thinking about the difference between these two teams. Florida's gotten so much better quickly, but 13th in the SEC in rushing, and that's been magnified against that front seven last year.
I mean, yeah, I don't know anybody who really ran on Georgia last year, though. So I don't know if I'm going to, discredit Florida too much. And Florida didn't really run on anybody last year at all. So then that's not taking away anything from Georgia's defense. Georgia's defense proved themselves time and time again last year there. So, and you point to that, and Florida did a pretty good job of stopping DeAndre Swift last year, but couldn't get off the field on third down. Third and Grantham was alive and well. It wasn't, it went away for a little while after Georgia and kind of peaked in every now and then. But, the last 2 years, especially in Jacksonville, third down has killed Todd Grantham, killed this Florida defense. And, you could say the last 2 years, even in the game, Georgia's controlled the game pretty much, but Florida's been scrappy in the game. Florida's found a way to stick around for 3.5 quarters 2 years ago under Dan Mullen, and Georgia eventually pulls away. And then Florida tried to mount, kind of somewhat of a mini comeback last year and bring it within 7. So, Georgia's controlled those games, but Florida's found a way to stay in them, whether it make a big goal line stand or one of Felipe Frank's best throws of his career to take a lead in the third quarter a couple of years ago, and then for the fourth quarter, kind of just Kyle Trask marching away down the field, but their drives taking way, way, way too long and not really being able to seal the deal. So, for Florida, it's get off to a better start in those games. But that's a big bugaboo for Dan Mullen right now. He's lost, not only these last 2 years as Florida's head coach, but, got trounced by Georgia in his last year at Mississippi State as well there. So, it's pretty much the last step for now in Dan Mullen's career is just to get over this Georgia hump. And believe me, Gator fans are looking at 2020 as being that year.
And just about every division in college football has the game. This is the game. This is the one that's going to swing it. And because of the way division championships are decided, it means so much when you only play 8 games in the conference that, man, if you lose that one, you're behind the 8 ball. 2 games. You got to be 2 games better the rest of the season. So, David, to turn it back around to Florida dominance of the mid-2000s in that range, what's it going to take to get over this Georgia monster that's been like a top 2 recruiting class now for 3 to 4 years?
Well, that reason alone, you're not going to see the 90s Florida dominance over Georgia anymore. So that's not going to happen. And part of that is look what Steve Spurrier and look what this game meant to him. He lost to Georgia his senior year and ends up winning the Heisman Trophy, but Georgia was the team that he couldn't get over as a quarterback at Florida. He took that game personal, and he circled it. If you want to get to Atlanta, if you want to win the SEC, you got to beat Georgia. Well, you know what? Kirby Smart is Georgia's Steve Spurrier. He takes this game serious. He knows the stakes. He went through it. He got his tail beat by Florida in his playing days. He takes this game personal. So it's, he takes everything he can and to go beat Florida in Jacksonville because he knows that's what's going to elevate the program. Spurrier knew that in the 90s and Kirby Smart knew that coming into his tenure at Georgia. So that to me, that's where it is. I don't think there's going to be, we're not going to see that 90s Florida dominance over Georgia now. So I pegged when Mullen got hired, I was looking at year 3 as being the year to get Georgia anyway, even because I was like, if there was a chance, this year would be the year because this would be the first chance they'd have a quarterback switch. Jake Fromm was going to be there at least the first 2 years of Dan Mullen's career. And I still think the recruiting was too good. Going into season at SEC Media Days, I voted Georgia, to win the East. Every year, these previous 2 years, the week of the game rolls around, and there I am picking Florida. 2 years ago, probably got well ahead of ourselves, but you can't blame a lot of people for picking Florida last year because Florida was playing better going into that game, but they just didn't show up. Georgia goes on to play and in the year pretty good, but Florida was playing pretty good going in that game. Georgia had come off the South Carolina loss, didn't look too good against Kentucky. Florida had beat Auburn, looked really good in Baton Rouge at LSU, and kind of people were jumping on the Florida bandwagon going into that game, and Florida just didn't look prepared. Florida got outplayed, got outcoached in Jacksonville last year. So, there's a lot of things to look at as far as what's it going to take to get over that hump. And it's just going to be, this 2020 year is your best year to do it. Georgia's got so much change, and Gator fans are asking themselves, if we don't get them in 2020, when will it happen?
Well, and Dave, you make a great point there about, Georgia not necessarily coming into these games super hot. 2 years ago, they were coming off of that loss at a beatdown in Baton Rouge. And so, rightfully so, there have been questions about Georgia coming into these games. But I think what you've seen, especially, these last 2 seasons coming out of that LSU loss and playing after that, out of that bye week, after the South Carolina loss, you mentioned they didn't play great against Kentucky, but, that was essentially a monsoon here in Athens. But you've seen Georgia play their best football down the stretch these last 2 seasons. And I think that's been the deciding factor in this Georgia-Florida rivalry. With Georgia kind of flipping a switch. Like you mentioned, Kirby Smart takes this game super seriously, being a player in the series and, getting his tail whipped by Florida in the 90s. I think you're right. He takes this game seriously, and the team has kind of bought into that and flipped that switch these last 2 seasons, playing their best football down the stretch, starting with the game in Jacksonville.
Coaches,
and Mark, before you go to more to that point, Florida's never been to Atlanta in a season they've lost to Georgia. Georgia's been they've lost to Florida a couple of times and ended up in Atlanta. But for the Florida side of things, that's how important it is for Florida. Florida's never been to the SEC championship game in a season they've lost to Georgia.
So the coaches define the college football programs. The quarterback on the field defines the team, or at least it starts there. And we've got a very interesting dynamic right here with Jamie Newman coming in. We've seen him on the field. We've seen him at a good program. We haven't seen him under this kind of pressure cooker to be able to deliver with, arguably the best roster in college football. So Palmer set us up for Jamie Newman and just it being a different feel without that kind of veteran CEO Jake Fromm. We almost got used to him being kind of like an NFL kind of veteran quarterback. And he grew up here in Athens, doing it on the field, starting with that fabulous freshman season versus it just being a different Georgia offense with a mobile quarterback now.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned the change in the Georgia's offense with a dual threat quarterback. I think you're also going to see a change in the offense because of the change in the offensive coordinator. Each of the last 3 seasons, Georgia's had a different offensive coordinator with Jim Chaney in 2018, James Coley in 2019, and this year you're going to have Todd Monken. And so I think Georgia fans are really excited not only about the change at quarterback, but about the potential change in the offense. And I think that's something that people were hoping to see this spring. Obviously didn't get to see it. And I don't know how that's going to affect Georgia. Not having that time, having that essentially, multiply in the fact that you've got a new quarterback and a new offensive system. I don't know whether, those two things will, balance each other out. Won't make a huge difference because the new quarterback would be learning a new system anyway. But you're going to have the whole offense learning a new system. And so I think there's a lot of change that's going to be happening with this Georgia offense this year. And I think that, they certainly have the weapons to do so. In the running game, obviously, with the talent they've got at running back in Zamir White, most notably, and then in the passing game with George Pickens. I think, the biggest thing for Georgia last year was the inexperience at wide receiver coming into the season and the inability of those wide receivers to develop over the course of the year. And the ones you really did see develop were Dominic Blaylock and George Pickens, 2 freshmen, and then Lawrence Cager, who was hurt for a good portion of the season, only played 9 games. So you're going to see some wide receivers this year that are more developed, have more experience. I think with this new offense, you could be seeing some bigger numbers out of Georgia's, quarterback and passing game.
So, David, you guys are the ones climbing the hill here. We know what we had year prior to Mullen. We know what he did the first year. We know you got a little bit better tacking on that extra win. Well, the difference for me in just the results last year was obviously eliminating the bad games, the bad losses, and getting past the rest of the division. There was no Missouri game against the rest of the division, and you played better against Florida. Again, it was a 2-touchdown game in the fourth quarter. You got a touchdown to get close, 24-17. But in regards to just feeling good and trying to sell this one to the Florida fan base in regards to why this situation could be different, this team's ready. What's your best hope?
Well, you got the best returning SEC quarterback. If you go and look at stats last year, and Fromm's gone, Burrow's gone, Tua's gone, and you look at the stats, and there was Kyle Trask up there with those guys, just a step below Burrow, a step below Tua as far as just pure stats go. So Florida's returning a quarterback that they feel pretty confident in, and led. I mean, look, Mark, you mentioned last year you go into, and I remember talking about this going into the season last year on the podcast is what do Gator fans want to see? And of course, a win over Georgia, a win over FSU, start to win over Miami, but the big majority of it was beat the teams you're supposed to beat, and that was the next step. Florida did that. It didn't look so good against Kentucky. Felipe Franks goes down, and Kyle Trask pretty much saves the season from there on out. And, no shame in the only 2 losses of the season being the 2 teams that ended up playing in Atlanta in the SEC championship game, and one of them eventually being the national champion. So no shame in losing those 2 games there. But, I mean, and going to the points here, Georgia is changing so much. And, that was going to be a step in and of itself. But then you don't get a spring. You don't get that rapport between the quarterback and the receivers and the new offensive line there. Plenty of talent to go along with it. But how does Jamie Newman fit into that? So I think putting together everything that Georgia lost and now losing a spring to go along with that, and Florida finally returning a quarterback that they feel pretty confident in. I think that's why the Gator fan base, starting to see, hey, look, maybe 2020 is the year, and it's got to happen. Mullen's got to go into that game in Jacksonville and prove he can go win. And I see it's pretty 50-50 split out there as far as national pundits go. You see a lot of people picking Florida. You still see a lot of people picking Georgia. And, I don't think there's a wrong answer anyway, but the final thing is maybe you got to see it before you believe it. And I think that's And there's no shame in people thinking that way too. Florida's got to go prove that they can do it. I grew up in the 90s, and I grew up in the state of Georgia, and I remember so many Georgia fans going into that game. Even if Georgia was the better team, we're gonna find a way to lose that game. And I do wonder if that is filtering into the Florida side of things now. We'll find a way to, Florida was driving the first drive of the game last year, wrong wristbands, and crazy things happening that you got to call a timeout because things aren't going right on the first drive of the game. When you had a little bit of momentum, you score there and
went for it on fourth down too.
Yeah, right. And you're in Georgia territory. You have to go for it on fourth down. You convert that, and who knows? It was a 7-point game. Who knows the outcome if you do that? Besides that first drive, it took to the fourth quarter for Florida to get much going on offense. So, I just think in combination of what Georgia's losing, but the thing is, Florida still got to find a way to score on that defense that they had trouble scoring on last year. So, while there is so many questions on the offensive side of the Georgia ball, the defense is going to keep them in every game anyway.
And David, of course, you don't want to become the Michigan to the Ohio State in the division where you're beating down you're good, but man, they're just a giant and you can't get past them. Then it becomes 5-6 straight years. Yeah,
Mark, I'm going to ask David this question. So you mentioned the strength that Florida has coming back and the confidence that they have in Kyle Trask at quarterback, and you mentioned that Georgia defense, and then you also mentioned the changes on Georgia's offense. Well, it's not like Florida's got a lot of change happening on defense too. Yeah. It kind of seems like it's Florida feels confident about their offense coming back with the quarterback. Right. And Georgia feels great about a defense that's returning almost everyone. And then the questions for both teams are on, when Georgia's got the ball and Florida's on defense, what do you think the difference could be there? Why do you think Florida fans should, feel excited about Kyle Trask going up against a defense that he really struggled against? And why do you think they should be excited about such a defense that's undergoing so much change, just almost as much, if not more, than the Georgia offense?
If you take last year just as an example, just a little bit, holding Georgia to 24 points, I think if you would have went into that game and said, all right, DeAndre Swift held under the 100 yards rushing, I think it was somewhere around there. I don't remember if he got it. I don't remember if he eclipsed 100 or not, but I know he didn't run the ball as well as we thought he would going into that game. And then, okay, DeAndre Swift doesn't really get going and Georgia scores 24 points. I think a lot of Florida fans probably would have taken their chances. Okay, we can score 27, but it didn't happen that way. So I think the thing about it is, and I mentioned Todd Grantham and struggling there. It's just for as good as Florida almost had 50 sacks on the year last year. Didn't touch Jake Fromm once. So for all the credit we want to give Jake Fromm and the Florida defense and all that, Jake Fromm ate him and Todd Grantham in that defense alive. Florida couldn't get to him on third down. He converted third after third down after third down after third down. Yeah, Georgia only scored 24 points, but they stayed on the field and they kept that Florida offense off the field. So that's one aspect that's got to change is, you can have success on defense. Yeah, you can hold Georgia to 24 points, but can you get your offense on the field? I mean, Florida, I think, only had 7 drives the whole entire game. And that's, Georgia scored 24 points because they controlled the game. And I mentioned that earlier. If Georgia's controlled each of these last 2 games, Florida's found a way to scrap by. But Florida's got to find a replacement for Jonathan Grenard and Jabari Zuniga. Zuniga didn't play all too much in the Georgia game last year. He was somewhat limited, made a play early in the game. But even going back to the year before when Florida was rushing the passer very well and with somebody like Ja'Kai Polite, I think they only touched Fromm once. So in the last 2 games, they've only sacked Jake Fromm once. So it's, Florida's still got, even you can feel good about the defense overall. It's just what happens to that game in Jacksonville. And I think that's the biggest question. Florida's been able to rush the passer. 8 sacks in the season opener versus Miami, 10 sacks versus Miami in the opener, 8 sacks versus FSU in the season ender, 18 sacks there, almost 50 on the year, but wasn't able to get to Fromm at all. So it's, that to me, that's where the recruiting talent gap has showed up more than anywhere between Florida and Georgia. It's just right there in the trenches of Florida not being able to use their excellent pass rush to get to Jake Fromm.
Yes, DeAndre Swift had to earn it last year. 25 carries, 86 yards. That's only 3.4 per carry and a 30-yard run thrown in. So it was really rough sledding outside of that 30-yard burst. Got David Waters on the line from Gators Breakdown, Palmer Tom's Dogs 247 Sports. This is really good stuff right here. Georgia versus Florida. What's going to happen in 2020 and beyond? So you mentioned recruiting. You mentioned recruiting gap. So we're looking at a Dan Mullen getting Florida in that top 8 to 10 range in the last 2 years of recruiting. Georgia's been just a monster with a top 2 to 3 class 3 consecutive years. So who are the guys these two programs are fighting for in that 2021 cycle? Palmer, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the Georgia's biggest targets would be safety James Williams. He is he's 6'5", and I'm pulling his page up right now. Out of Florida. And so I think that would be one of Georgia's biggest wins. This class for Georgia so far has been really focused on in-state talent. With 2021 quarterback Brock Vandegrift, 2020's Georgia class was all across the country. 2021, they've really focused on the Peach State. So you haven't seen as many Georgia-Florida battles in this 2021 class because Georgia has been hitting, in-state talent so much. But James Williams is one that I would really target. Number 1 safety, number 6 player in the country, 6'5", 218 pounds. And with Georgia losing Richard LeCount this season, he could be, a potential player to plug and play.
Yeah, it's been just a couple of weeks ago, I think. Some offensive lineman, the one from Kingsland, that Georgia just got. His name escapes me. But then there's Mims. There's another offensive lineman. That it's a Florida Georgia battle, and Georgia's probably going to get both of those guys. So, if for as I said, the difference in the game has been Georgia's offensive line versus Florida's defense, and Georgia just kind of looks to put more of the gap in there. But yeah, he's right. You're not seeing as many Florida Georgia battles this year as you've seen in years past, and a lot of it, Georgia's been able to come in and kind of cherry pick some of the Florida's elite talent. Florida's got to get better there, but that's just Florida State, Miami, all have got to get better there because Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State's all coming down here and getting the state of Florida's best talent. So if Florida wants to close that gap to those schools, they're going to have to start holding some of that elite in-state talent. Don't get me wrong, there's enough state of Florida talent to go around, but those top 10, 15 guys are going out of state. That's been the biggest difference in Florida recruiting right now.
No big surprise that Florida, in terms of high school players, leads Texas and California right now in regards to NFL rosters. So that's pretty much firm in regards to California, Texas, Florida. That's 40% of the top 300 players in the nation. And again, right now, Florida's got the most high school players on NFL rosters. David Waters, Gators Breakdown, Palmer Tom's Dogs 247 Sports. So as we trended out to 3 to 5 years, which, man, when you really look at college football, a lot can change in like 5 years. Ask Florida State fans, go on down the line with a number of teams. But David, has Dan Mullen had any missteps? Now, nothing's perfect, but I know that you were in favor of the hire. A lot of people wanted Chip Kelly, but he wouldn't have been a good fit. I think we would all agree. I thought it was a home run hire, and it's pretty much proven out to be just that. And it looks good for the future. Everything's rolling pretty well. It's just, can you go from being really, really, really good to elite?
And I think what it's going to take, Mark, is for him to get his own quarterback in there. We know this is going into his 3rd season now, and Kyle Trask is the starting quarterback. That's still a holdover from Jim McElwain. We still have not seen a Dan Mullen quarterback at Florida, as crazy as it sounds. We all thought that, all right, Felipe Franks would probably start year 1. Emory Jones would take over after that. Well, Felipe Franks goes down, and in comes Kyle Trask to kind of take over and play really, really well. I do think we'll see more of Emory Jones in the future coming up in 2020, and he'll take over for the year after that. But a lot of Gator fans are really pinpointing to Gainesville's own Anthony Richardson, big-bodied, in the mold of Tim Tebow, Dak Prescott style of quarterback that to eventually take over for Florida. So now I think before we see I mean, look, he's already competing for the SEC East in the last couple of years. It's come down to Florida, Georgia. But in order to take that next step, maybe to beat Georgia, to get over Georgia, to go challenge Alabama, to go challenge Ohio State, Clemson, and all those bigger teams, it's going to have to be his quarterback that ends up taking over and making the whole team take that leap.
Well, and look at the coaching change at Georgia. You saw that change happen very fast.
Yeah.
In year one, you had Jacob Eason in there, who was Kirby Smart's recruit. And, obviously he goes down in his sophomore season, and Jake Fromm is plugged right in. And that's another Kirby Smart guy. And so, you haven't seen Kirby Smart having to work with a quarterback from Mark Richt's era, with the exception of, starting out the first game against North Carolina in 2016. But that was a battle, and Eason, won that out handedly and was the starter game 2. So, you bring up a great point there, that you haven't, I guess we're going into year 3 of Dan Mullen. You haven't seen him work with a quarterback of his own, with the exception of Emory Jones a little bit here and there. But whereas Kirby Smart, who's going into year 5 now, has had his quarterback the entire time.
Yeah, and it's been Mullen's history too. He doesn't rush quarterbacks out there. I mean, even as an offensive coordinator under Urban Meyer, you had Chris Leak for the first 2 years, and then eventually their quarterback Tim Tebow takes over. We had to get to year 3 there. Year 3 as a head coach, we're still having Kyle Trask there. So, and that's not a slam on Trask at all. To me, he's still the best option for 2020. It's just, I think, for Florida to take that next step, and not necessarily just winning the SEC, but winning the SEC 2 out of 3 years, or 2 out of 4 years, or being what we think Florida can be. It's going to have to, that those years steps are going to have to be a Dan Mullen quarterback.
And Palmer, I don't need to remind you about a monkey being on the back of a coach in a program. So for Georgia, it's a different deal. And when I talk to fans, and this is just about every day, and Georgia's brought up, it's in a negative light. And I think that's crazy. I'm like, okay, yeah, if this is going to keep going for 5, 6, 7 years, yeah. But my goodness, they came within an eyelash of winning a national championship in 2017. So you could argue they had the best team in college football in 2017. And then, it takes a monumental comeback in 2018 by 2 touchdowns coming back in the fourth quarter by Jalen Hurts to get it done there. And then we know what happened last year. Again, LSU played out of its minds. And sorry to remind both of you with the helmet on the shelf, just perfectly positioned, of what, brought you both down last year. But my goodness, that was like a fairy tale. Everything happened perfectly. And they got a couple guys not going to be around named Burrow and Brady this year, and 700 plus points. So, man, Kirby Smart is doing a great job, and everything's just on the upsurge. Regardless of that, hey, we just missed it in 17. Oh, we just missed it in 18. Oh, what could have been in 19.
Yeah, I mean, you see in this, ESPN Last Dance documentary, they mentioned you build a team to beat one team. And, Georgia has been built to beat Alabama. They haven't been able to do it yet, but I think the way you see Kirby Smart recruiting, you see him recruiting with the intent of going and winning that SEC championship against Alabama. And obviously this year they'll get, assuming football happens, they'll get that chance in Tuscaloosa week 3, going into enemy territory and have that chance there. So, you could see as many as 3 matchups between the two teams this year if you were to see it in the regular season, the SEC championship, and then in the playoffs. I don't know that Florida is built to beat Georgia yet. And I say yet because I feel like, they are building, you see them rising up the recruiting rankings, moving from outside the top 10 to inside the top 10 to further up into the top 10 this past season, all the way up to 8 in the most recent class. And so, they are building, but as much as Georgia has built to beat Alabama, I don't know, and had that chance and gotten close. And, as you mentioned, had 2 really good chances. And you can make an argument that they were the better team in at least one, if not both those years. But I don't know that that Florida is there yet, because Georgia has been recruiting at such a high level, with the number 1 class in 2018, number 2 in 2019, and number 1 in 2020.
Folks, this is what we do here. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, debate, discuss, analyze college football like no one else. And you're going to get a whole lot of topics like this across the country in future weeks. But unfortunately, most of them are coming from me. I brought in the real experts and the real top guns for this one. Palmer Tom's Dogs 247 Sports, Gators Breakdown, David Waters, baby, right there. He built it from the ground up. These are two phenomenal sites, two phenomenal platforms. You guys do an amazing job. And I would hope anybody who's not locked in, again, Dogs 247 Sports, Palmer Tom's Gators Breakdown right here with David Waters. So you got to jump on to your favorite audio platform or right here on YouTube for that. Guys, it was phenomenal. Appreciate you stopping by, laying down the knowledge on one of the great rivalries in college football. And before we actually let you go, should this be a home and home, or is Jacksonville the right place to play it? David, you first.
This one hits close to me. I was born in Jacksonville. I was raised in South Georgia. This game stays in Jacksonville for me. It holds a special place for me. I get the argument of wanting to go home and home. I absolutely get it. But we're losing tradition in college football step by step by step by step, and this is one of the biggest, especially for me. But you think Florida Georgia, you think Georgia Florida, you think Jacksonville, and that's just the way I think about it. Like I said, I live in Jacksonville now. The game's so close to me. I'd hate for it to move. If it had to go home and home, keep Jacksonville in the rotation somehow, some way. Do a home and home Jacksonville for 2 years, home and home Jacksonville for 2 years. Do something like that. I'd hate to see this city lose the game for good.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Jacksonville holds a special place in this rivalry. In not just the games, but in recruiting and in the fans. That's kind of that area where it's, hey, are you a Bulldog or are you Gator? And so I think as much as people here in Athens, people in Gainesville would love to see it, on the campuses, and I think it would be incredible. I can only imagine, fans tailgating in Athens, fans tailgating in Gainesville, and I think fans from Georgia, given the fact that they've traveled incredibly well to South Bend, to Nashville, to Pasadena, you would see, and to Baton Rouge, you would see Georgia fans find their way into the swamp and would love that experience, and I think Florida fans would love to come between the hedges. So I think it would be a unique way. There would be a unique way. There could be a unique way where you could work a home and home into it. But you're absolutely right. Jacksonville holds a special place in this rivalry, and I don't see it moving anytime soon.
All right.
And Mark, before we go, I brought this up on Twitter a couple of weeks ago. I do wonder with what we're going through with this COVID situation and all that, the season gets delayed somehow. The game could move out of Jacksonville this year. I mean, say the Jaguars have a home game, the weekday schedule that they want Florida, Georgia, say they keep the schedule the same that they have it now. They just push all the games back, say 3, 4, 5 weeks. Say the Jaguars have a home game that Sunday. What do they do? Now, Florida and Georgia have a bye week to play with. Maybe they could push the game up a week without a bye week or something like that. But I do wonder, if they can't find a way to schedule it this year just because maybe the Jaguars have a home game or something like that on a Sunday, if we could see the game, and Georgia's the designated home team this year, would that play a part in, maybe getting a game in Athens or moving it to Orlando or Atlanta or something like that? So we may see some kind of weird situation this year just because of everything going on that it may not be in Jacksonville this year.
Right. And I mean, I think if there was going to be a year where it was going to be weird, everything's going to be weird this year. And so, why not take that as an opportunity to bring it to Athens, this year with Georgia being the home team and then, take it to Gainesville next year and then bring it back to Jacksonville. I think, it would be a great environment. It's going to be a great environment regardless. These are two passionate fan bases and, hopefully we're watching football on Halloween Saturday.
Yeah.
Right. You guys saved me on that one. I was this close to signing off and having about 50 people down in the comments section saying, Mark, you dummy, you didn't ask him about the most obvious thing here. A dummy or worse. We all three know how that is on social media. If you don't say the right thing or miss something by just a little bit, but it's
I can believe you. I've had conversations with the mayor of Jacksonville. The last thing he wants is to lose this game. So,
I bet. It means a few bucks here and there. I'm
Oh, yeah.
All right, guys. We appreciate it so much. Again, it's David Waters, Gators Breakdown, Palmer Tom's Dogs, 247 Sports. Lock it in right here, Mark Rogers TV as well. And we will see you soon. Guys, it's been great. Thank you so much.
Thanks.